Hey, I'm Daniel Berger, and this is Adventures of a Real Estate Broker. Welcome to the podcast where Metro New York real estate meets great stories and a douse of humor. Forget the dry sales talk. Here we dive into the fun and unexpected moments of real estate. Join me each week as we explore Westchester, Long Island, the Bronx, and more. You'll hear about the people, the places, and the crazy situations that make this industry so interesting. Thanks to our sponsor, Remax Prestige Properties, we're ready to share the lighter side of real estate. Whether you're a pro, a buyer, or just curious, we've got something for everyone. Ready for today's adventure? Let's get into it. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Adventures of a Real Estate Broker with Daniel Berger. I'm excited to have on this week Dani Dorman. He is a real estate agent. He's also an associate broker, I'm assuming, and also he's not an associate broker, but he is in charge. He is the team lead for the Dorman Homes real estate team. He's with Real, and I wanted to have him on because we've done a couple of deals together, and also my book, The Adventures of a Real Estate Broker, probably couldn't happen without this house. This is a very important house. Dani and I worked together on, I guess you sold my client that house, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was
So
an interesting one.
that was it. And that's the whole point of The Adventures of a Real Estate Broker, right? Where things happen along the way. I think that one we had a buried oil tank. We probably had some leaking. It was a house that was built in the 1800s. And you never know what you're going to know, right? Until you're trying to go through selling it. And then things pop up and you got to think quick on your feet. But clearly, I thank you for that. And we wanted it was a beautiful house and it made for a great cover of my recently published book. So thank you
And
for all
it
that.
started a relationship with you, so that was great.
Exactly. And actually, you
Mhm.
and I, one of your teammates right now is working on a deal with me as well, on a
Yes, Priscilla.
cooperative in Yonkers. I know you're doing a good job as a team lead because she's great. And so co-ops are really hard to work with. And Priscilla, I think is her name. And she's good people, very hard. We had to do a lot of digging and changing. There was misreading of a debt to income and common sense doesn't always prevail. And yet she and I had the common sense and basically kept working to push through what we feel like math is math, right? And so when the math is mathing and then someone else tells you it's not mathing, how do you work to get it through? Because in the world of co-ops, they're very easily could have just denied you and move on from there. But so I definitely see that it's the same way that you and I work through a transaction. So I see that works for your teammates, which is actually something that I would say is if you're an agent out there looking to join a team, it's always good to work with people that can teach you, but also have a good name recognition out there. Because obviously, I knew when her offer came in that she was affiliated with you, and it gave me a sense of I felt good about it. That at least if it was something that she and I couldn't necessarily do, I always had you as the team lead that I could go talk to and figure it out. Luckily, we never needed you to get involved, right? Because she's quality people. That's a cool thing. What I like about things that I noticed in seeing you on social media is really about how to develop leads, sales leads, listing leads, and you have a unique take on it. How do you, I guess we should separate seller leads from buyer leads, but talk me through the process of what you do and how you're better, different, and special in trying to get buyer leads as well as seller leads.
I've been with several brokerages over the past 17 years, and before joining Real, I was with KW, and I'm sure you've heard of the MREA book. And they're very big on, in the book, it says leads, listings, leverage, but it's actually listings, leads, leverage. And Benny Kenny tweaked that because from listings, you get leads. And so my job on the team is to focus on getting listings. And from that, we generate a lot of buyer leads.
So what I've always found, so I'm only 8 years into the business, right? 8 or 9 years. I'm an old man. got the gray hair and the beard to prove it, but newer in the sense of real estate. But I'm not new to business. It's always in the businesses that I've been in the beverage world, you still have to figure out who your leads are and then nurture your leads, right? Nurturing the leads is so important, especially in real estate, because someone that you close today in the future may want to sell. They might want to buy something. They also have friends and family. So I think it's very important of how you do that. Some people have said, oh, you need to focus on listings or that you should only take listings. And my view has always been it's interesting because I think in the third or fourth year. So in the beginning, I bought Zillow leads, right? Zillow, and I know you do that as well. You have a whole system of how did we do that? Everyone's like, you're crazy. Why you're doing it? I'm like, because these are people, and you take those people, and they might be small, and then you sell them, and they have friends and family, and they're going to do things on social media. So in the beginning, as being a newer agent, I was much more buyer focused. But guess what? Buyers become sellers, and then they buy again. And so I remember, I think it was my fourth year that I had 52 deals and exactly 26 were buyer deals, and 26 were listings. And by bringing in leads or people, and eventually you're going to get, there's an ebb and flow, and you'll get both sides of it. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, so during COVID, I went full time. Even though I've been around real estate for almost 2 decades, my father was a general contractor. I worked with him. Eventually, I went into selling and servicing our properties and then our clients and things like that. But during COVID, I went full time. And my first year, I did 17 transactions and it was like 50-50. And then my second year, I did something like, I think, 24 transactions. It was very listing heavy. I completely neglected my buyers. And that's when I decided to start a team. Priscilla, who you mentioned, has been a big part of the buyer side. And so together we are able to divide and conquer. So she focuses on buyers, servicing buyers, and then I focus on servicing sellers. And last year we did 63 transactions and it was almost 50-50.
Yeah.
So not bad.
And she's going to get listings as well, right? Because
He
that's
does get
because
listings as well.
when you're a competent person and you're always and people are going to, oh, how do you help me? I you certainly need to do both. You don't have to do both, right? But sometimes, listen, if you have a client that you've listed a house for and now they're ready to buy, they might want to work with you, right? They might not want to work with somebody else because they know you and they have a relationship with you. So
So
that happens too.
So every person that comes through our open house, every buyer that comes to the open house is once we build a rapport, we ask them like, do you need to sell another property? And then we know what to say when they say yes. Great, let's get together, take a look at your property. It also depends, do they need to sell in order to buy? That kind of changes a few things, but we set up right there and then we set up a time to get together with them at their house and we bring comps, we bring information, we bring our presentation, and that's how we're able to convert open house buyer leads into sellers.
That's so while I don't technically have a team, I built the whole brokerage of a team, right? So I'm basically the same. I'm a team lead for my brokerage just because that's the way that I wanted to do it. There's no point of having sub teams. Certainly my eight, we probably have 15 of us where, but if I'm more heavy on the listing side now because of just getting people asking me to do stuff, then that's a lot of open houses, right? So open houses are where I share anyone on my brokerage every week. They can tell me I'm available and they give me their schedule of when they want to do open houses. And I pick and choose and and set my agents up to run those open houses. So that kind of helps their business. My my sellers clearly like it because I'm able to do a ton of open houses. And generally, sometimes our sellers say, oh, I don't want to have an open house. I'm like, why don't you want to have an open house? It's basically, especially with the way that marketing is, right? Every open house gets broadcast on everyone's website. Zillow, Trulia, homes.com, everyone, and then all of the branded sites. So it's not bad to get publicity out there that you're selling a house. And then, as you said, people come in, and not everyone that comes into an open house has an agent. And some might like what you guys are about and say that they want to work with you.
Only 1 out of 10, I would say, seller clients doesn't want to do an open house, but in a lot of cases, they just don't understand. They don't want 100 people in their house at the same time. So we explain to them that we're very systematized. We only let one or two family in, depending on the size of the home at a time. We manage the process. We have sometimes, if we know we're going to have a busy open house, we bring in additional team members to control the traffic. So we ask people to wait. We have bottled bottles of water. If we're expecting rain, we'll even have a few extra umbrellas. So people are comfortable waiting to come and see the home. And we have booties, hand sanitizer, depending on depending on the seller client. But we definitely control how many people are in the home at one time. Yeah, so it's not chaotic. And if we reassure the seller that it's going to be controlled, it's going to be managed, there are not going to be a million people in the house at the same time. We walk everybody through the home. Nobody's walking around on their own. That usually takes care of that concern.
Well, I think your point that I hear from what you're saying is really you have to listen to what the needs are of your client, the seller, and then either educate them and or adapt your normal process to make sure that they're comfortable with it. Because that's what we work for the seller in that case, and it's their home, and we have to represent the home in the way that they want. And if they feel that there's things that would they would like us to do in a way that makes sense for them, then we have an open conversation and try to do that. So I'm not a big booty guy, but clearly when my clients, when that's something that's important to them, then we do that. And taking shoes off, that's some people's customs, right? So I would it's always about what's best for them. And if it's whether it's a customer or just they don't want people to walk in their house, then we work with that. And generally I would say that I think sellers are appreciative when you can adapt what you do to work together. People, then you're hearing them, and then you're really like collaboratively trying to work to sell someone's home.
So,
What do you, so I know that you're into, or what's your process on getting lists? Since you're mostly in charge of getting listings, a lot of people work with for sale by owners, FSBOs, to try to contact them and say, what's your process with that? I've never done that. I've never contacted a FSBO. My view is have at it. Obviously, I know that anytime my clients ask me about selling a property off market, I try to say no and try to work on listing is the way that you get the most eyes there and generally the most money. There are cases when because of maybe someone in the house or there are cases when you can't really do that, but there also can be controlled ones. But what's your process on going after people that are trying to sell their homes themselves, and how do you interact with them? Because a lot of those people's phones ring all the time, because that's a lot of people do that. So what's your secret sauce on how you do it where you don't get doors slammed in your face and people are like, okay, I'll consider it.
yeah. So the house that we sold together, that was a for sale by owner. So she was a broker of 30 plus years, tried to sell it on her own, but unfortunately, I feel like she wasn't technically savvy. So when I'm calling for sale by owners, and yes, I'm probably not the first person that called them. They probably already had 20 plus agents calling them. And a lot of the times they're like, "Are you a realtor?" And I say, "Yes, I'm a realtor." I introduce myself and they're like, "We're not interested." Be like, "Not a problem." I just try to find out a little bit about the house. Why are they selling it? And see if I can offer another means and a service to do stuff that they don't do. So I just ask a lot of questions to see if there's a need for me there. Because if they have 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I was doing a lot of for sale by owners. Now it's a little bit more challenging because there's not a lot of inventory. So a lot of them are, if they're pricing their home correctly, they are selling on their own. I do still believe, to your point, like I think you touched on earlier, they're not getting as many people in the door. And so I think in many cases, they are leaving money on the table even after commissions. But we've still this year been very successful with for sale, helping for sale by owners get their homes sold. And we just come from a place of help and service. And if we can bring them more buyers and they can, the biggest thing is if you don't have a lot of people coming in the door, and then you settle on the first offer you get. I've seen it many a times. They didn't vet the buyer correctly. They basically settled on the only offer they had, and then it ended up being a terrible transaction. The deal dragged on, or the deal blew up altogether. That's why having multiple offers and choosing the best buyer, even if it's not the best price, is so crucial. And that's what we bring to the table. So part of our listing appointment presentation is talking about everything that we do marketing wise to go above and beyond other than MLS and Zillow to drive more buyers into to see the home, and then they ultimately will net more money with us than they would on their own or even with somebody else.
It's not even once, it's also negotiating with people, right? Because when things go wrong, if you have people on both on the other end that are going to be open and going to be honest and fair, then you're able to sometimes get through issues that seem like there's no out, right? Where there's just an impasse. And so those are other things that you hire real estate agents for, right? Not just because, yeah, you can put it on the market, but not every buyer is going to go to a house that's just for sale by owner. It makes it more complicated to get there. And so, certainly, it's in almost every case after I get involved, it's been better. It's been more beneficial, including, like you said, paying for the commissions. I had one where a school across the street from a house was trying to buy the house. They went there and they offered the person $1 million. She called me in basically. So this was like, I think we can do better. And actually, I put the house on the market and the school was annoyed. They're like, why are you doing that? Because we offered her $1 million. I'm like, yeah, that's not what she wants. And we ended up getting 1.3 million. So clearly it paid for my commission, the difference of 30% more. And it's no with no special thing. It was just putting it on the market and getting other buyers that might be interested. Oh, it turns out
Yeah,
this is
so
funny. The school bought that house and they paid 30% more because they were basically trying, they went in, they had it, they showed her an appraisal, but they were working for their best interest, not for her best interest. And so when I put it on the market, the funny thing is I had no other buyers, but they didn't know that. And me putting on the market got them scared that they weren't going to get the property that was across the street. My seller was extremely happy because clearly she probably paid me 2% or 3%, whatever it was, on 1.3 million was a lot more than the $1 million that she was going to get. And it was funny because we had no other offers, but it was just the idea that they weren't going to get it because the thing with land is you can't recreate it, and you can't recreate the property across the street from a school that wanted to use it to house some of their teachers. So that was one example. And I'm even working on one right now where through Facebook and all those types of things, there was an offer of like 1.6 million for something. And the seller contacted me and we had a conversation. I excluded that person. I said, if you do a deal with the person that you've already been working with, it's no problem. We're at like 1.86. And again, that's just from putting it on the market. And this, as you said, supply is low, the demand is high. And so you don't always get the optimal offer if you're just doing more, not as much public and more close-ended transactions.
yeah. Yeah, I think like we had a similar situation where in New Rochelle it was like a mixed use property, and I don't want to say who the neighbor was, but it's like a big commercial neighbor wanted that property, and they were also lowballing her, and she called a friend who knew me. Friend is not licensed. He's licensed in Connecticut, not in New York. I went and spoke to her, and we ended up getting her an amazing lease to own. She's making money on the interest, 2 year option, seller financing with she ended up netting like almost $500,000 more than what they were offering her at the end of the year and a half deal. But regarding for sale by owners, listen, it's kind of if you are a contractor and you're building, buying, selling homes, you don't need a realtor 100%. But if you're like if you the last home you sold was like 10, 20 years ago, a lot of things have changed. Like you and me, we negotiate like how many homes every single year. No transaction is the same. And having that experience is no different than if, God forbid, you need surgery. Would you go to somebody who's done one surgery all year long, or would you want to go to a surgeon who's done 50 similar surgery types, right? I would feel more comfortable with the second surgeon. So it's the same thing with us.
I'll challenge you on what you said. I think a builder does need somebody. So if a builder has a sales arm, that's one thing. But a regular builder, you know what they're really good at? Buying properties, adding value, putting things in, not selling the property, right? Not talking to the other side, not. And so I would argue that I deal with a lot of those people where I've had ones where I'm like, you pay me what you think I'm worth, and someone that does a lot of transactions. I actually am closing on one of those today for $3 million, where he didn't need to use me. So this is a purchase, but he's a rehabber, an investor. He didn't need to use me, but he did use me because he sees that I add value. And I also do sell his properties where we don't need open houses. I'm like, why don't we want an open house? I go, and we had 10 people that showed up, and something that he wouldn't have necessarily done in the way that he does it. So I do think that there is value to be had. Clearly, the maybe not the traditional percentages that people think, but again, the higher value you go, you don't take percent to the bank, you take dollars to the bank.
I don't disagree with you. We do work with contractors as well, and you focus on what you're good at, I'll focus on what I'm good at. I was giving them a benefit of the doubt that if you're doing a lot of transactions on your own every year, maybe you don't need a realtor. But the reason for we're talking about open houses is the other thing that I tell my seller clients is we're going to have 30 people come to an open house. 80% of them, this house is not going to be a good fit for them, but we're going to use them as leverage to negotiate with the people who do want this house. Because if you go to, I said, put your buyer hat on. If you go to an open house and you don't see anybody, why would you give the seller top dollar? Clearly, there's no interest. But when you come to an open house and there's a line out the door, what we tell them is, hey, listen, you saw how many people we had at the open house today. If whatever offer they're offering that it's not going to work, would you like to go back and revise it? And 99% of the time they do. So that's another reason why we want to do an open house, is to help us negotiate from a position of strength when we have a good turnout and a busy open house.
It's only a position of strength when there's a good turnout. When there's nobody there and they're the only people there, it could be less. But
You're
I,
probably overpriced at that point then.
and you're not going to probably get the numbers that you want anyway. I do agree. I love the open houses. I like to see people in the house. And again, sometimes people, they're not ready now, but they're ready later. And so there's many reasons why you want to get people in the house. You also are hearing people's feedback, right? People's feedback on the house is something that we can then bring back to the seller and maybe tweak our strategy based off of that market and that house and all that. So I always think that when people tell me that and I do open houses myself. I'm a broker that I've done personally $42 million in sales last year. And I do open houses every single weekend because I also want to be in touch with what's going on. And my clients like it. My client, a little of my secret sauce is that I'm very involved. So it's not like I'm pawning it off to other people. So I certainly am there. And I also,
We did 4 open houses 2 weeks ago. Two on Saturday, two on Sunday, and we do two every single weekend on average.
yeah. And I think that's good because I think it also, like me being out there, I hear what current buyers are saying. So I do have buyers as well, but it's not bad. I only found that it's always worth the 2 hours of my time, always worth it. And that's like when you're in real estate, right? You're working, well, you really work every day, but you're clearly working on weekends. And the time that it's to me, it's an investment in helping to sell that house, but also potentially making connections out in the market. So I think those are good. You talk about Zillow leads. So a lot of people, a lot of agents and brokerage, they think Zillow is the dirty word, right? Zillow. And I've built my business on having those people hit the house. The lead comes to me from a buyer perspective, and then trying to figure out whether it's generally not the house they first click on, but that's somebody that's looking for a house. How do you work with them? And I guess the why others don't like Zillow is that you have to parse through the leads, right? Maybe 12%, 15%, maybe 20% are people that are ready, willing, and able is the key, right? Because a lot of people click on a button because they like a house and they're not in any way able to purchase it. But how do you leverage the leads that come in like that, where you have to like talk to people and then ensure that they're qualified? And how do you, what's your process with those types of leads?
Sure. So we don't rely on Zillow, but we do buy Zillow leads just to supplement our team. And Zillow says 4% conversion rate is good. But it's funny you said 12% because that's our conversion rate for Zillow this year is 12%. And we listen, they call in like now they have this whole where they book the appointment for you instead of getting them on the phone. A lot of these are like set appointments. So we call them right away and we basically tell them, yeah, we're happy to take you to see this house, but do you mind if we ask you a few questions? And so we qualify them on the phone before meeting them at the home of their choice. And either we have them come in, depending on the answers to our questions, either we have them come into our office for a buyer consultation, or depending on the situation, we'll meet them at the property, have a buyer consultation there, sign the buyer agency agreement, and either they're putting an offer on the house that we met, or we begin working with them, sourcing them other options.
Yeah, I think that's good. In a lot of things in the world, things happen and it's how you react to them, right? Where I don't love the idea that the appointments are made because because Zillow's setting the expectation that you can see that house. One, maybe you can't because there's also paperwork that needs to be signed before you can even show someone a house, and that's not necessarily done yet. And there's other things of scheduling, right? So maybe it's not available, maybe your person can't do it. But you do have to get on the phone right away to start the conversation and say, you know what, 11 o'clock's not good, but four, how about how's 4 o'clock or whatever, or to try to work through those things.
Yeah.
But I think in many things, when life gives you lemons, right? How do you make lemonade? So you basically, this is somebody that's interested in a purchase of something, and then how do you work through, is that the right purchase for them or move them to something that's more appropriate? But yeah, it's nothing's easy, right? It's not you're not spoon fed it, and it's not like like you're at 50% conversion rate. So you're somewhere 12% is fantastic. But
Zillow, yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's how do you take things and how do you process them, and then how do you then work? You're going to do better if you're going to contact people right away and follow up with them and set them on searches, and then when they ask you questions you respond. You're going to get a higher percentage than people that basically aren't doing all that. And so being a real estate agent's hard, right? We have to be by our phones like all the time, and when people ask us for questions, they have to see that we're there to help them. So
Yeah.
that's, that not everyone does that properly.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have systems for long-term nurtures because a lot of, like you mentioned, some of these Zillow leads, they're just window shopping. They want to buy something, but they're just not ready. So we definitely put them on a action plan where we touch them between 36 and 72 times per year. And we continue that. And it also depends, like 36 to 72, it depends on how ready they are to pulling the trigger and how qualified they are. But we do, yeah, that's the name of the game is it's the follow up and staying in communication with the prospects.
What's your advice for a new agent who's coming into the business, whether it's they want to do it solo or join a team? What are the things that you think that they need to, what do you tell them that they need to be doing in order to be successful?
Yeah, I love that question. I wish that I had, so when I went full time, I've invested money in coaching and I've had multiple coaches in the last 4 years. And I wish that I had a mentor or a team leader when I first got my license, because I probably would have went to real estate full time sooner and I would be in a different place. Because in the last 4 years, we've bought several investment properties. We manage Airbnbs now. It just opened up so many doors. And for new agents, I would say get a really good mentor that would keep you accountable to what you need to do. And what you need to do are money making activities. And it doesn't have to be FSBOs, it doesn't have to be expireds. You got to find what what works for you, what you enjoy doing. Like, some people love door knocking. I'm not a big door knocking guy. I'll sit on the phone and call FSBOs all day long, but I don't call my sphere as much as I should, but I'll call strangers all day. But part of our systems is it helps me stay in front of my sphere and friends, family, and past clients. But for new agents, get a great mentor or a coach. Somebody will keep you accountable. Practice objection handling. Learn what to say. Practice that on your friends and family. Don't practice it on clients. So then, when an opportunity arises, you know exactly what to say, how to convert that lead into a buyer or seller, and do those things that actually generate you income, and don't do the things that don't generate income. And that's why we have pretty good leverage and support that helps us take those things off our plate so we can focus on those money making activities.
I do think that I like you have to do the things that are comfortable for you. I've never door knocked and I've never cold called. That's not I don't want to do that. And luckily I was able to get here without doing those things because those things are things that I don't like. And I'm lucky that I'm still able to do a lot of buying and selling. So that's interesting. I think the mentor thing, I like the word mentor. I don't love the word coach because coach to me feels like people are charging. And somebody that's on my team or your team, there's no fee. Like you're paying a fee. I wouldn't do that. Like, again, I'm lucky, again, being old, right? I'm older and I've done things in other businesses. So I felt that I was able to apply sales and marketing skills to real estate without having someone. But you talked about accountable. So there's different types of people. If you're accountable to yourself, my feeling is you don't need someone to tell you to do all those things. It's the people that there are people that need that, right? Like a personal trainer, right? Where people aren't going to go work out. So they need the personal trainer to get themselves into the gym, to work with them on the lifting and the aerobics and everything that they have to do to make sure that they do it, right? So from a gym perspective, I would need a coach because I wouldn't do that. In real estate, in my job, I feel I don't need that because it's me. I'm self making sure that I do what I need to do. But I do think so a newer person, it's great. And that's where, like in my brokerage, like I'm basically the mentor, and on your team, you're the mentor, where we're the ones that people can come and you've been doing it for 18 years and for me for 8. So we've had things. And I think you're right about practice. The more that you practice things, the smoother you're going to be. I'm not a script guy. I have zero scripts, but practicing is different. Practicing is just talking about things that could happen with buyers, sellers, open houses. And the more things we see, new things every day, if the practice is communicating with the other side about whatever the situation is, you're going to be able to react. And also you're allowed to say, I don't know, and let me talk to a subject matter expert. I think isn't the worst thing that you can do is trying to get out of your lane and giving advice when you're not sure or it's not. So we're not lawyers, right? So when there are legal questions, I like to bring the lawyers in to give us what their opinion is because that's a legal opinion. Ours is just some guy's opinion on what we think. And you and I probably understand a lot of what the legal might be, but it's always better to really bring in the real lawyers to ensure that people are getting legal advice or an accountant for accounting advice, right? Oh, how can I deduct this or what can I? That's not our lane. So I think that's important for us to all know we can say what we're good at and when to bring subject matter experts in.
I mean, even if we know the answer, and 9 out of 10 times we know the answer, but we still refer it to like the subject matter. If it's a legal question, even if we've been through the experience, we know exactly how, speak to the attorney, speak to the lender. They'll be able to provide that information for you better than me.
A lot of times people are
And they
like, oh,
appreciate it.
a lot of times people are like, should I pay off this bill? Or can I get a check? And I'm like, okay, can I make a deposit? Can I withdraw money? We're like, okay, while we might have a feeling, or maybe we know, it is always better to say you should talk to your lender about those things because it's also everyone's different, right? And so while maybe opening like replacing your iPhone if you're on a plan, that's a lease, right? So that runs credit, and that's another thing. So for some people where they're buying a house with plenty of money to spare, it's not a big deal. There are some that the DTI could be extremely tight, and that I've had cases where that put people over the top, like renewing a telephone. So all those things should go to the lender because I don't want to know about what their math is on their financing. Leave that up to those people. We have a piece of paper, the mortgage pre-approval, and that guides us, but it's not detailed. And that's why we work as a team. When we represent buyers, it's the title people, it's the buyer's attorney, it's the mortgage people if we're going to need, and we all together, or how do we get in front to a closing table?
Right.
So, what do you see as the future right now? With AI, have you incorporated AI into your current business structure?
Yeah, a little bit. We use it every day, but yeah, so we do all we digitally stage. So we use AI for digital staging and property descriptions and a few other things. But I know there's a lot of AI tools out there, and we're actually signed up to go to a class I think it's in Massachusetts, that's going to be covering like everything AI real estate related. So we're hoping to learn more there about how we can implement AI in a bigger fashion than we already have.
I definitely think it's here to stay. With many things, if it was that easy to sell a house, they would have already automated it. They would have had a buyer would just contact the seller. They would automatically go to the house. The door would open up. The person would walk through, and they would sell the house without us. It's not. There's so much more than we're not door openers, right? There's so much more in the process, especially when things potentially get sticky. Our job is to protect the interests of our client and help figure out optimal solutions. And so that maybe down the road a computer can do that. At this point, probably not. And I guess you know what? We can't worry about the things that we can't do anything about. Do every day, just go out and do your job, and ultimately we should be fine. But again,
And
I can't worry about 15 years, 20 years from now.
until robots can manage our clients' emotional roller coaster of feelings, we're here to stay. Because if sometimes you bring a buyer and seller together, and that's like the recipe for disaster, and having the two agents to go in between, not getting emotional about the deal, but just getting it through the roadblocks. That's, I think, where we come in and on a high level, and I think we're here to stay for the near future.
So I agree with you. Danny, thank you for coming on this show. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having
I
me.
think I definitely, as a team lead, I think you're certainly practicing what you preach, and you've represented your clients. And I think if everyone just does that, then I think the things will happen smoother. And it's all about eyes wide open, right? So if you represent a buyer and I'm representing a seller, it's like everything should be like this is what we're agreeing to and moving forward. And if pitfalls happen, you have open dialogue. And I think that's the process that, again, I don't know if my client Siri is talking to your client Siri, that's going to really help as much. So it's probably more still the people. So with that, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on, and
Thanks,
everyone,
Daniel.
this is another episode of the Adventures of a Real Estate Broker. Until next week, we'll see you then.
All right, take care, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for joining me on the Adventures of a Real Estate Broker. I hope you enjoyed our time together as much as I did. If you laughed, learned something, or just had a good time, do yourself a favor and subscribe to the podcast. A big shout out to our sponsor, Remax Prestige Properties, for making this all possible. Remember to leave a review if you enjoyed the show. It helps more people find us. Until next time, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep exploring the adventures in your neighborhood. I'm Daniel Berger, your New York Realtor, and I'll see you in the next episode.